lead us to darkness, being alone. I just a rabbi who's 95 now, who's was a friend of mine in Chicago. He doesn't use his cell phone, doesn't have internet. He just has a regular telephone. So there's really a risk of people finding darkness, and we have to make sure there's light. We have to make the phone calls. We have to do the chesed. We have to do whatever we can do. There can be light, but we have to make that happen. So I just hope that in this time of a plague, of a pandemic, that we find a way of finding light. So that's what I learned tonight.
Great. So I'm going to, let's see. So, I realize that even though we just sort of started right away, we probably should reintroduce ourselves in case people don't know who we are. So I'm Stephen Rubenstein. I'm the rabbi of Congregation Beth Am. It's really a pleasure. Thank you for being here, and pleasure to be with Rabbi Lopatin again 2 weeks in a row like this. Never did this before, and it's like a real opportunity for me. And I think, anyway, I really enjoyed last week. And so that was Rabbi Lopatin. For those who don't know, shall I let you want to introduce yourself again and tell us who you are?
Oh, me? Yeah, hi, Asher Lopatin. And my wife, Rachel, is behind me. There we go, yes. We're good friends of the Rubenstein, so we love them. And I'm the rabbi of a new shul, a modern Orthodox shul in Huntington Woods, Oak Park, Etz Chaim, and also the executive director of the JCRC AJC, Jewish Community Relations Council, combined with the AJC. And you know what, Rabbi Rubinstein, can we go just do a quick run around, like see who's on the call? Can people just say their name and maybe what?
Oh, come on. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, of course. I'm unmuting everyone. All together now. No, how do you want to do that?
Just quick, just say your name and maybe which where you're from.
Alex Kovnat, West Bloomfield Township, Congregation Beth Abraham Hill of Moses.
Oh, I forgot. Right. How do we do this? Right.
Yeah.
What order? This Facebook, I'm telling Jody about it. Just Facebook.
Yeah, I don't know how we can do that.
Okay.
Why don't we not do that?
We are going to figure this out.
Yeah, we'll do that another time, but I'm going to mute everyone again, and then
I'm sorry, but it will happen. We're early stages. We're in the early stage.
So here's the thing. So we titled this, Are We Living Through the Exodus? And then we sort of, in a reverse sort of way, decided what exactly that meant. But I'm gonna start by asking you a question, if it's okay. So I was thinking, because we're thinking so much about Pesach right now, there's a part of me which wonders what it's going to be like to sit at our Seder tables and feel drawn to making every connection in the Haggadah to what is happening right now, like we're sort of doing now. And I'm a little bit wondering and sort of struggling with like making the Seder about right now and forgetting like all the other stuff that the Seder is supposed to be about. And I feel like in some ways that's exactly what we're supposed to do. And in some ways it's to like miss the forest for the tree, the very big tree that's like right in front of our face. I'm wondering, by the way, we'll tell everyone, we did talk a little bit about this in advance, but not this question. He has no preparation.
One card. We have one card.
Yeah.
But we didn't ask
what do you think?
Yeah, look, I think that my first reaction is, this is incredible. We are, I'm verklempt. We are going to sit at our little tables. And we mentioned this, I think, briefly last time, that, like they sat at their little tables. We're not going to, I don't feel we're going to even sit like misubin, like relax. I don't know. Is anyone going to be relaxed? No, we're going to be like the first Seder. Monechem, Chagurim, Nalachem, whatever, they give them the pasuk, your belt tightened, Nalechem baraglechem, your shoes on, your makelchem biedchem, you're ready, your walking staff. I think we're going to be so utzadik at this Seder. And yes, it's not going to be, we're going to skip that whole 2,000 years rabbinic period kind of, and we're going to kind of go back to, but we're going to go back to the idea of, in every generation you have to see yourself a whole door, as if you got out of Egypt. We are going to feel that. We're going to feel, I think, blessed by the people we have around us, and if we're on Zoom, by the people that we connect to, however we can do it, or thinking about those people. I think it's going to be an amazing experience that is so powerfully connected to Pesach. So I want to ask you, what is the what is the loss that we're going to incur? Because it seems like from your question, you understand there's a loss. And I want to hear that a little bit more. I want to unpack that, if you could, a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think the loss could be that, one of the things that, I appreciate, I think a lot of people appreciate. Again, I think it's a two-sided coin. The one side is, the sense of tradition and some of the sense of the texts within their context. Like, what does the story of the Exodus itself mean in the Torah? What does the way the rabbis understand that story mean to us, right? But I recognize that the rabbis were interpreting it based on what was going on in their lives. And so in many ways, I'm sort of answering my own question, like to place that story into our own, the immediacy of the moment, in some ways is very traditional in that sense. But I also feel like, someone suggested on a different call that I was on yesterday, maybe we shouldn't say kol dichvin, like all who are hungry come and eat, because in fact, like we really don't mean it this year. Like we're not opening our doors to all sorts of people. In fact, all sorts of people who are normally at our table, we're telling them not to come. I actually literally last week called someone and uninvited them to my Seder. They were already not coming, as it turns out, but they, this idea of like changing the feel of our Seder is necessary. And also I do sort of worry about, in the same way, by the way, that I worry about, I'll use a sort of crotchety sort of word, like newfangled Haggadahs. They bring like sometimes a beautiful new ideas. And also it's like, sometimes you feel a little bit like you've completely lost the story itself because it's so modern, so contemporary.
Well, this is so interesting because, Rabbi, you are a conservative Jew and educated at JTS, and I'm modern Orthodox and learned with Rabbi Soloveitchik and Yeshiva University. And I think there's a fascinating, and it might be just my crackpot idea, but I think there's a fascinating divide, whereas like there is a sense that I'm hearing from you that we have to be, as much as we can have these newfangled, new agey, all sorts of things, we have to be loyal to a historic kind of tradition. And what did the rabbis really think the Seder meant? And maybe what did the medieval authorities think it meant? But there's a funny thing within Orthodoxy that is counterintuitive, but I believe Orthodoxy is very deconstructionist, and meaning that I'm more interested in, I follow halacha but it's an interpretive tradition. I want to feel, what does it mean for me now? I'm much more interested in what it means for me right now than in what historically it has meant over the years. And again, that limits us a little bit, but I'm much more interested in what it means right now. I'll give you an example of this from the Haredi world. The Haredim that walk around all over, and especially in Jerusalem, in these black and white socks and black socks and, golden socks and all these things. And in their mind, they're dressing traditional. That is tradition. We know, like, this is the way they dressed in Poland or wherever they're from, Bubba or Gay or whatever they're from. This is like modern. They dress that way because something happened at 200 years ago. People were dressing that way. It's not modern. It's not anything religious. But to them, it feels religious. To them, that's the way people were dressed at Sinai and all that. Just like when you see Art Scroll Haggadah with the kids with maybe the payas and yarmulkes and getting out of Egypt, you know. So
Right.
the fascinating thing is there's that, I kind of in that world, like I recognize that our interpretation of the Seder is going to be different than that tradition, in many ways, that traditional interpretation, and maybe the vision, even the rabbi. But I think it's going to be, that's okay. I think that's what it's meant to be.
Right, and I appreciate that, and I don't really disagree. I think it's the balance that I'm sort of wondering about this year. I mean, I didn't grow up singing. Nowadays, I do Hat Tikva at the end of all my Sedarim, whether it's in the congregation or in my home, because I just feel like it just makes sense for me. I'm not even sure exactly where I got that from, but for me, it's a good example of sort of what you said, which is, what does the idea of redemption mean for me? We could have a whole conversation about Zionism and redemption and all that, but there are all sorts of ways. And it's one of the things I appreciate about some of the more contemporary Haggadot also, is that they're bringing all sorts of ideas to bear. And, it's usually all the extra handouts on the table. It's often not the stuff that's in the Seder, but the things that are coming up right now, as unfortunately our current situation is. So can I ask you another question?
Let me ask you,
go ahead. You go.
Yeah, but Sid, on this, I want to take the reverse. I want to throw out everything I just said. That maybe accepting what I said, meaning and all that, is it possible that our rabbis they knew there are also times where there was oppression and there was all sorts of issues and people were tempted to do a quick Seder and a nervous Seder. I'm thinking that maybe we have to escape from our, a trauma that we're feeling now, or a sort of oasis. Let me ask you, do you think the Seder should be kind of an oasis, like ignoring almost what's going on now, and it's an escape from that, or not? And maybe that's the point you were making.
Well, I mean, I think the question is somewhat parallel to the way sometimes I get into conversations about what Shabbos should be in general in terms of shul, right? To what extent should Shabbos be a protection against all of the politics we deal with all week long, which is why some people come to me and say, would you please just keep all politics off the bima? And I feel like, the way we deal with the world, whether you want to call it politics, you want to call it social action, you want to just call it derech eretz, the way we treat other people, that's Jewish. So we have to bring that into synagogue in ways which can be hopefully both challenging and unalienating to people, because we want to talk about it from a Jewish perspective, and that's all the people who are sitting in my pews, basically. So I don't think there's any way to keep it out, especially this, because it's pervading our existence right now. There's no way to keep that out of our Seder. But I do think that, Seder represents, and Pesach represents ideas that are, they're really old. And they're old for a reason, and we're still talking about them for a reason. And I don't want to miss that opportunity to at least bring the traditional ideas in to what we're experiencing right now, as I think hopefully we're doing now at this moment too.
So what was your question?
So what is my question? My question is, one of the things we talked about just briefly in preparation for this was the idea of, how we should be sort of sitting patiently in this situation, and how we should be, let's call it activist in certain ways in this situation. And actually, I was thinking about part of the story itself of the Exodus. So the first time Moshe comes to the people, they can't hear him because of kotzer ruach, right? The idea of shortness of breath and their sort of cramped experience doesn't allow them to even hear the possibility of redemption. And I couldn't help when I thought of it, of thinking the idea of breath and what we're dealing with right now, and coronavirus and all of that. And of course, they're not the same, but there's that similarity. In any case, I guess the question is like, what should we be doing? How should we be sitting in this time? And where does the role of patience play out in our experience as individuals, as it relates to Pesach, and as it relates to that celebration we're supposed to be celebrating freedom?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there are two interesting questions that you're asking. Even then, one is what general attitude should we take? Is there a danger of being too optimistic? Is there a danger of being too pessimistic, too realistic, too hopeful? And the other question is how active we should be. I should take the first question first, but the active one, I'll tell you, me personally, I'm always a crazy optimist. Sorry, my thing freezes up every once in a while. I'm a crazy optimist. And I remember when, I might have mentioned that when everything was happening in Riverdale in New York, and Rachel, we lived there for 5 years, and Rachel was constantly in touch with her friends there, and this plague was kind of coming to the school. They closed everything. So when they were closing everything, Rachel was getting so scared, and I was like, Yetov, it'll be okay. We're going to be okay. And thank God we will be okay. Please God, we'll be okay. But on the one hand, I'm much more of an optimist, and I don't think I believe quite as optimistic as our president, who thinks it might be 2 weeks, by Easter. I don't know when Easter is. I don't know. Easter like around Pesach time, but I'm not that optimistic. But on the other hand, I really love that interpretation of matzah, of not letting chametz occur, needing it, not letting it sit for 18 minutes, that this is the holiday of action. Wherever you are, if you're stuck in your house, a project, a chesed, call people that are even less fortunate than you are. Activism, social justice activism. Does everyone have, thank you, Sharon Krasner, Easter is the Sunday after Pesach starts. Except on a leap year, right? That's different. But so I'm really a big believer. Does everyone have internet in our society, and what's going on? And now it's a necessity. So I'm very much for crazy, naive optimism and all that, but working very hard, being active. And in this era, I'll tell you, with Zoom, it's incredible. Zoom. It's we can go to. You can visit any minyan you want around the world and get their Zoom, as long as they let you in, but get their Zoom number and Zoom into it. And it's incredible. And you can, so I that's sort of the balance that I have, a lot of optimism and not a frustrated activism, but an optimistic activism. How do you deal with it?
I mean, I've been spending a lot of time on the phone with people, and let me change that. So I find myself listening to people dealing with the day-to-day, and I think I try to be pretty upbeat, and I'm still feeling pretty upbeat, but I know that this is wearing on people already, and last week there was like tremendous energy, like make sure people are calling each other. And I feel like, as you say, that's sort of the activist spirit that we really need to have in order to keep people connected. But again, as you say, I think estimates vary about how long we're going to be doing this. And, as rabbis, you and I were on a call today, and community rabbis have been talking, like how far out are we changing our schedules? We're trying to figure that out. And it's hard. I'm not, when it comes to timing, just for example, I feel like I can't be optimistic or pessimistic because there's so little. It's strange to have so little knowledge about what life's going to be like in a month. You know, how often does that happen? Things sort of, you know, elections come and go. We're happy. We're not so happy. Weather comes and goes. We're happy. We're not so happy. You know, but this seems very much outside of our experience. And I think it has thrown not only me, but I've thrown a lot of people for a loop. So I would sort of agree with you that part of it is to have, not just to be optimistic, but to like plan optimism a little bit, to push ourselves in a way which looks for the future, looks towards whatever's going to happen next. And in the meantime, to deal with what we do in a really active way. One of the things that I teach occasionally is Musar in our congregation. And so one of the midot, one of the qualities that you work on in Musar is bitachon, which is trust in God, faith in God. And I find it a really interesting midah and a really challenging midah. There are all sorts of stories from rabbinic literature especially, but even beyond that, which really emphasizes, you know, bitachon in your life. Gam zu l'tova. This too is good, right? Whatever it is, even when the bad thing is happening, there's this like long extended story of a series of incidents. This bad thing happens, and they say, oh, this is so terrible for you. He says, no, let's wait and see. And then another thing happens, and he gets saved from the bad thing. And then another bad thing happens, and back and forth. And each thing is, it's good, it's good, it's good. And in the end, it all works out okay. Well, I can't say that I have that sort of bitachon. That's not the way I feel emotionally. It's the people who kind of feel like, you know, this is the way God always meant it to be. And I think in some ways that can be a really peaceful way to live. And sometimes I worry that can be a real passive way to live. It depends on your next step in relation to whatever's happening, all those forces coming to you. I don't know that I'm quite at a Gam zu l'tova. Maybe Zoom is our big payoff. What we got from this big, terrible thing is to understand how Zoom works so well and can bring us together. But it's not enough. It's not enough.
You know, it's interesting. I studied with Lithuanian rabbis, both at Brisk in Chicago, Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik, and Yeshiva University. RIETS is a Lithuanian, basically they consider themselves like a Lithuanian transplant to New York. And the Lithuanians, the Litvaks, were mostly anti-Musar, you know, that little bit of, and where it resonates with me, that the non-Musar is, I trust in God, I believe in God, I have faith, I say, but I never want to accept reality the way it is. And it's interesting, some of the, so I want to fight back, and I want to fight. I want this to be a battle. It's interesting, you know, Rabbi Rubinstein, Steve, this is a new way of teaching because, first of all, it's amazing that on the sidebar in the chat room,
yes,
everyone here figure out how you can introduce yourself without a mishmash by just going on the chat. So that's beautiful. The other thing is that there could be amazing conversations going on while we're teaching, and not only we're not supposed to ignore them, but they're amazing. We have to incorporate them. So we're gonna have to figure that out. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was looking at Nancy's comment about the Shoah. Yeah, I mean, there is sort of like, and not that Nancy said it in this way, but she was talking about the Shoah and how people celebrated observed even during the Shoah. So it's one of those like, it's a quit your complaining. If they could do that, certainly we can do this, right? And hopefully there is a bit of inspiration in that. We always want to be careful not to, about comparisons. It's always like a little bit fraught, and we don't want to compare what we're going through right now to the Shoah. But in the meantime, we also are experiencing something very real and emotionally draining for people. and challenging on a whole variety of I think spiritual and psychological, emotional levels, not to mention practical levels. So someone else was writing about Zoom, Seders. You know, what does it mean to like be at the same Seder table year after year with the same person, hopefully who was doing a very nice job leading Seder. And now you're not only not with them, but you don't have someone to help lead you through a Seder. And it means something to you. So how do you do that? You know, by the way, this goes back to the activist spirit that, you know, you were talking about. Maybe you want to talk about some of your plans.
Yeah, well, I want to, you know, first of all, I want people to be frustrated, like to be angry with Hashem to some extent. We need righteous indignation. I mean, when, again, Lahavdil and my daughter and Kara, who's doing great now, thank God, but when she had cancer and was on the oncology ward, and you see people suffering more than she even suffered, little kids, and I bring Hashem into it and say, look, Hashem, you know, I want, and that's sort of, we need an activist attitude towards halacha, and, you know, not, so we got, and by the way, if I get frozen, it's not because Hashem is freezing it. I don't believe that, you know, but, or I'll go on my iPhone if I get frozen. So, you know, that's the thing. I don't want to let, and it's interesting about the Holocaust. I want the activism from the Holocaust years and the amazing people who did what they could, either religious fighting opposition, right? And were able to pray. I remember in the latrine, wherever they could pray, and that, or the real fighting back against the Nazis. That's where I really feel that we cannot be complacent. And as an Orthodox Jew, I feel, as an Orthodox Jew, I just feel we cannot be complacent, and we have to study the halacha, and we have to find a way of not just saying, okay, I go back, this is my refrain, I've said it, if you've been to any class I've given, it always comes up. When Abraham took Isaac to be up to the mountain to be sacrificed, and then Abraham says, God, what do you want? You want him to sacrifice him? And he says, don't sacrifice. And God says, I did not tell you to sacrifice him. I told you to bring him up to the mountain. Your interpretation of my word was kill him. And I didn't say that. Now, that's kind of lame it's a midrash. Okay, I'm not saying God said, a little bit lame, God, come on. But where it is true is like, let's look at the halakha. Does the halakha tell us that people have to be alone for their Seder? Or is there a way of doing it that people are not alone? And again, I'm happy if God tells me you have to sit alone or someone has to sit alone at their Seder. That's okay, I'm happy to do that. But we have to be active to make sure that's what God is, that's what halakha is saying. So, we're doing like early Seder an early pre-Seder model Seder on the first night. So we can connect with people like from 6 to 8 p.m. And then we're going to do our real Seder, 9 p.m. late at night when it's dark. And then second night, and I've gotten a little bit of flack for this, but second day Yom Tov, many opinions allow electricity anyway on Yom Tov. We don't use them, but many opinions allow it. Second day Yom Tov is a wonderful custom, I believe it, but on second day, under these circumstances, I'm going to do a Zoom Seder on the second day of Yom Tov to certainly connect to people that want to be connected, that where it's meaningful, where it's powerful. And, that's going on a little bit of a ledge halachically, but I think, do something, and not just, I'll end with this. This is a big rant. Not just fasting, do something sensible, do something like look at the halakha and learn it and do something sensible, not just let's just declare another fast. Whereas it's so funny because there's some opinions that say the last thing to do in this time of crisis is mess with the way you're eating and all that, do something. I'm going to end this in 30 seconds. That's when they're at the Sea of Reeds and Hashem says to Moshe, Dabel b'nei Yisrael v'yisa'u, don't pray. Like, what are you praying for? Now's not a time to pray. Now's time to get on with it and move to the sea. That's what I'm feeling now.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that is sort of similar in these last weeks, because we've talked a lot about this. So we juxtapose on these issues in a very weird way. But we're both, I think, you're like, so on the leading edge, let's say, of the Orthodox world when it comes to these things. So you're not alone, but there are other things going on. But I think a lot of the Orthodox world is not going to do that sort of thing. Whereas I find myself in a conservative movement, which I feel like has made a lot of change in about a week and a half. And now we're starting to talk about it a little bit behind the scenes a bit more. Not that no one was talking about virtual minyan and things like, and Zooming on Shabbat and streaming on Shabbat, all of this other stuff. There have been some papers written. I find myself not on the leading edge, but I feel like I'm a little bit being dragged along and resisting. And I think I may have mentioned it to you, or I feel like I said it a few times since I heard this last night. There was a call with Hadar. Machon Hadar had a event last night where they were talking about halachic issues surrounding Pesach right now and around the coronavirus. And Rabbi Ethan Tucker, who was actually a scholar in residence at our shul 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer even, I don't know. He finally said things the way it was sort of inside of me, but in a way which I just really appreciated. So Ethan said that his attitude seems to be a stance of resiliency. And by that, I mean, and he used that word, there are certain things that the halacha permits, and there are certain things that not so much. And even though we want to recognize that, like, pikuach nefesh, which is within the system, if we need to save life, we need to do that. It's not a question.
Right.
But there are these other things which, like, we want to connect people, and we connect people 6 days of the week. And we need, as the halacha, does it allow us to do these other things on Shabbat, for example, stream? So he happens to think probably not. So what does that mean? It means that part of the overall experience of what we're going through right now is sitting with things that we can't do. And to acknowledge that and say, this is temporary, which, right, poo, it's temporary. And for the moment, we can't say Kaddish together in a minyan. For the moment, we're going to have a smaller Seder. We're going to have to manage to do that. And I don't mean to be, and I didn't understand from him. He wasn't being cavalier, like tough, just deal with it. He wasn't saying that. He was just saying, this is the structure. And in a moment like this, we do what we can do. And what we can't do, we say we can't do. Right. And so again, I found this part, every phone call I've been on with people from my shul, no matter what we're talking about, it always seems to come back to, are we saying Kaddish together? How come we're not doing minyan? So we're doing a little bit of davening, but without minyan, without saying Baruch Hu and the Kedusha and Kaddish and things like that. And, we're living as a congregation, I think we're living in a moment where I'm sort of feeling one way, and I know that some people are not quite feeling it that way. And anyway, so you're sort of leading the way, and I'm sort of dragging behind within my context, but in a way which I think there's strong reason to think of it that way as well. Yeah.
I hear you. I mean, it's beautiful, this commitment and trying to navigate it. And in the Orthodox world with these minyans, so there is some that do Kaddish Yichidi, certain Kaddish individual one that's different. But the fascinating thing, is that there are, I heard in Efrat in Israel, there are these Zoom minions. I thought I sent you that. I don't know what they're basing it on. And then there's some, religious that say, say a Kaddish. What's the problem? It's good, no harm done. But the one question I have has because the psak of the Committee on Law and Standards was really, actually, the Orthodox world followed it also. I don't know if they meant to, but that you need a minyan in one place in order, and then you can answer Kaddish and say all sorts of things, but you need that minyan. And I love that because there's a thing about community and being together. Now that it's v'nahafochu, going back to Purim Torah, it's like reversed. You're not allowed to be together. As the Committee on Law and Senate has been called into session 24 hours a day, and to reconsider that, and if they spent, nonstop work on that tshuva, and at the end of the day said, you know what, there's nothing we can do. This is the will of God. This is the way we understand halakha. I'll accept, but I want them to go back and revisit that and look over all the sources, see what they can find.
I will tell them you said that. Here's what's happening. I'm sorry, I'm not putting us back on spotlight video each time, but no. So there's a webinar call on Thursday, which is more of a presentation, and it's not the committee. They even let people like me in. So, but I'm going to be able to listen to a couple people talk about this issue. But basically what did happen is they did release a statement last week, which said that the committee, they didn't get together because people can't get together, but they did sort of discuss this online, and there seems to be agreement among a minority of the committee that it's okay to have a virtual minyan without 10 people in one spot. But, and so I think what sometimes happens is someone raises an opinion, a minority opinion, and then a lot of people follow it because it's what a lot of people wanted to see.
Right.
But what that means also is that the majority thought it probably wasn't such a good idea, at least at this moment, and even in this moment. Mm-hmm. And but I think it's also a whole question, which we're not going to get into right now, of communal dynamics and how the conservative movement works, and maybe the leanings of the rabbinate overall, or the leanings of the congregations overall. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a rabbi, congregational rabbi, and he's doing all sorts of stuff. He's doing a minyan online, and he's reading Torah, and he's having people do aliyot from afar, and he's there, whatever, all sorts of stuff. And he said he's doing it because he feels like this is what his community really needs. And I appreciate that. I think that is the role of a rabbi. Different communities need different things, and anyway, that's what he thinks his community needs. So I thought it was interesting. We'll see if over time the actual tshuva gets changed so that it permits, even in a non-shat hadchak, emergency situation, to have a minyan from afar. And then if they say, no, it's not really okay, it was only special for that time, the question is whether conservative congregations or others who would follow this psak will say, okay, I guess we're not going to do that anymore. We'll find out.
So interesting. Maybe we'll open up in a minute. Maybe you want to give an ending vort.
An ending vort.
And if you want a minute to think about it, I have something to say about Israel.
Go right ahead.
Now we'll see tomorrow, but Wednesday is when the Supreme Court said that the Knesset, that Edelstein has to allow a vote on the Speaker of the Knesset, and it looks like he'll be voted out historically by a coalition of Jews and Arabs, basically, and which is very exciting to me for the idea of coexistence. But it will, if it happens, it will be amazing that our fledgling state of Israel, our fledgling democracy, was able to really have this amazing democratic moment. The Supreme Court, Netanyahu tried to stay in power and try to block this. You have a plague, you have a pandemic. The Supreme Court ruled a certain way. We'll see what happens. The truth is, if it doesn't happen, look, these are crazy times, and Lincoln didn't, he suspended habeas corpus. So, but it will be amazing, an amazing tribute to Israel if this change in leadership really happens tomorrow.
So I'll just say this. I mean, I think this issue that we talked about a little while ago about optimism and pessimism, and balancing activism and passivity. In some ways, the staying in the house is really, it is about passivity. But I think, as many people have really already pointed out in all sorts of ways in the last week, it is the staying at home, which appears passive, which is the most active thing that we should be doing.
Well said.
And I feel like there's an irony in that. And I think sometimes there are actually all sorts of situations going beyond the immediate where the best thing to do is to wait. The best thing to do is to let certain things play out. The wisdom is in figuring out at which moments you need to act assertively and which moments you need to allow someone else to act, or in this case, just hold back so that things can play themselves out in just the way that they're supposed to. So, I think B'nai Yisrael may have had kotzer ruach, a sort of shortness of breath and unable to hear, but hopefully we'll have like enough, we'll use the Yiddish, the Sitzfleisch, to just sort of, be in this moment, even if it persists through, which it will, through Pesach and even a little bit beyond, to be able to really get to the other side.
That's a great point. This activism within patience and patience within activism. Go ahead.
So why don't we open this up to some conversation? If people have, there's a raise your hand button, which you can use to let me know. You also could literally raise your hand, and I could try and see that as well. If anyone has a comment or a question.
Where is that button?
I don't have it because I'm the one leading this on Zoom, but it should be somewhere near the bottom, I think.
On the bottom, chat. Yeah. Reaction.
Thanks to Aaron Schwartz for that comment. Yes, Rabbi Heller. He's at the center of this. He has a paper waiting to be sort of reviewed by the law committee about Zooming in particular, about streaming on Shabbat. Not so much about the virtual minyan, but he's been active on this as well. So is anyone waving?
I want to see, Stephen, now that we have Zoom, there's no geographic limitations. I want a series of great debates. I want to see Ethan Tucker debating, Joel Roth debating, and then, Rav Sherlow, Rav Stav, and, we should get these amazing debates going.
Yeah, why don't, you only have a couple of jobs now. Why don't you pick up another job and you arrange that? Yeah, I don't see any hands raised, but people are making some nice comments on here. We can be patient. It's okay.
Until they're, let me actually ask this. This is a tough question. This is interesting. I don't know. I find it interesting. This question about, and maybe what do people think of this balance between economics and life, and whether we're willing to put the economy into this tailspin, and yet pikuach nefesh, we're saving lives. So I think that, and where I tied into Mitzrayim was that there was also an economic issue in Mitzrayim when they were asked to. Normally, they would get the straw for the concrete or whatever for the bricks, and they were made, and then when things got even worse, Hashem said, Paro said, no, heaven lo yaten lem, we're not giving them a straw. So I like you said at the end, I hope we remain strong, even if, God forbid, when things are not good, and also resilient and helping each other when things are not.
Yeah, by the way, I would say, as I told you, I'm trying to make a lot of phone calls nowadays, and it could just be by chance, or it could be that it's now, over a week into this, but I'm now getting calls or speaking with people who are telling me more about economic difficulties, sometimes about themselves, sometimes about, their businesses, sometimes about people who own businesses who are, trying to figure out what to do about their employees who have been loyal employees. In some ways, for me, it's been a little bit like, what I've been hearing is going to happen because I watch the news and read the news. But now I'm like hearing actual people saying this is what happens. This is what's happening to them, trying to figure out how they can keep their employees and how they can pay them and how long and what's going to. So, the pressure is really there. And I also feel like, related to what you're saying, I do feel like the issue of keeping a community together in crisis is a big challenge. Moshe, in those moments you're talking about, has the whole people pushing back against him. He's trying to help them because that's what God wants him to do. And they're like, cut it out. You're making things worse. And, I think as a nation, whether, we can point our fingers at the 20-year-olds who are on the beach in Fort Lauderdale. But I also think among older adults, I think we have this issue of, you see it in the news, the cure is worse than within the disease. And so we should get back to work. And so what happens when that bubbles to the top, and how do we maintain a sense of unity so that we can actually get to the end of this as opposed to going in a big circle? Yeah, I mean, I don't have an answer to that. We got some questions here. Yes, Hebrew Free Loan and Federation. Federation's probably going to be raising additional money. If you need, you should call them. If you can help, you should respond to that as well.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see if anyone has any questions about this. And I wonder what, I'm thinking, I don't know, I want to know if people feel this sense of is Zoom this opportunity, or is this thing we're going to get tired of in a couple of weeks, and it's just not going to, we're going to get sick of even in a couple of weeks. I just don't know whether we're going to, because it's so peculiar that this pandemic is occurring now when we have this technology. Like if it occurred 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I think I don't know, maybe we would just be calling each other and we would do conference calls or something like that. It's a one thing. So a wonderful scholar, Natan Lopez Cordoza, wrote an article in the Jerusalem Post that really talked about the wonderful things that occur, with this pandemic, of our realizing what's important, our closest to our family. But he prefaced it by saying that, what are you saying? There's so much horror going on. I wonder whether, and I think Karen, you've been, was that your hand? No. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, how much should we talk about how, wow, we've discovered all these wonderful things, and does that diminish the horrors of what's happening?
Yeah, I think right now we are lucky to have whatever means we have to bring people together, and I think most people are finding it really helpful. The ones that I speak to, I guess the ones who don't are not signing on to calls like this, so I don't know. But I would say this just personally, like a week and a half ago, I really thought I would have done a lot more reading than I have actually done. I saw you can take a virtual tour of all these museums, and you can do this and you can do this. I have done nothing like that except on Shabbat, where I really got to do some reading because my computer wasn't open. And some people are working, like I'm working from home, and I know many people are doing that. Some people are not, they're at home, but they're not working. And so it's a different situation. I think we'll know sort of naturally, when this is, we'll know in a couple of weeks if people are really sick of it. And then we'll also know when this sort of tapers off. I think we'll know if people really want to do this, or if they really are thinking people are going to want to go out. I'm thinking they're not going to want to be in front of their computer. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Karen, I'm going to unmute you there. Go.
I was just saying, but we can't go out. I wasn't raising my hand.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, we can't go out right now. No, I'm saying when the time comes, we're not going to want to be in front of our computer anymore.
I'm hoping we don't lose this. I'm sorry. I'm hoping we don't lose this sense of trying to connect, which is just starting. So I've started going to a different minyan every night starting in Detroit. I know, Stephen, you have an early morning minyan. I'm going to see if I can get to that.
It's
right.
It's occasional. We're doing it occasionally.
But I want to join. I will. You'll tell me. We'll join. And I want to go. I've been to Shar Zedek, to Bnei Moshe, been to a minyan in Riverdale, the Kehila. There's a baby naming on Friday night, but it's at 5:30. It's 2 hours before Shabbos begins at the Isaac Agree downtown synagogue. So I'm going to go to that. And then I have a friend in Lexington, Massachusetts. I'm going to go to his minyan. This is it's a blessing, and in this era. And I don't want to lose this. I want to lose this disease, please God. And I want the economy to get back to normal. But I don't want to lose this possibility of visiting, of transcending geography. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And time.
And time, how?
Time, because I'm on Sunday, and no one should be interested in this, but on Sunday I'm getting 25 years ago, or in 1996, so 24 years ago, we used to get together, a couple of rabbis from Lakeview in Chicago. We'd get together. I'm sorry, it froze again. Okay, is it working? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. So we used to get together with 4 of us in Lakeview in Chicago at Borders Bookstore. Remember Borders Bookstore? So they used to have that place, like a town hall area. So we'd get together, called Biblically Incorrect, and we would argue and have like a round table on different topics. And this was 24 years ago. So some of them I've remained connected to. One of the rabbis I haven't spoken to in 10, 15 years. And we reconnected. And on Sunday night, we're going to put a faux Borders bookstore in the background behind us. And we're uniting with them. So it's like over time also. It's such an incredible opportunity. We would never do that. Well, we were going to find a Borders bookstore. We had a really, and they're living in different cities. So, I don't want this blessing to run out. I don't know how to put it back together, to keep the moment.
You seem to have supporters of that idea on our
okay.
Yeah, people think this is a permanent change. Maybe not quite. I don't know if everyone's at this level, but they appreciate it so much that it's going to be something people are going to want to do. Yeah, I mean, I know all sorts of people who are like having dinner with their friends or having dinner with a group of friends, or like. So I mean,
right.
Yeah. I think, like so many things, we'll know after it happens.
Right.
Yeah, but you're saying it's not. You don't just want to let it happen. You're saying you want to make sure that we try to do something which will really preserve these opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that one of the tests we're having, and you mentioned this, as sort of resilience, is are we gonna? It's harder to communicate now. We're in our houses. We're alone. We have unstable internet. We have all that. But are we going to really push ourselves to make the connections that are possible, or not? And it's a real test. I mean, it's a test in how we're going to support those that are weakest and all that, but also how are we going to really have these communications and thrive in this area.
It seems like a nice place to end, especially since it's 9 o'clock. So thank you for chatting, and thank you everyone for being with us. We will, if all goes well, I have recorded most of this anyway. It took me a couple of minutes to remember to record it, and we'll probably put it out in a couple of ways on Facebook. Karen, did you actually want to say something now, or did you just find that button? Karen, oh, you don't even know. Okay, never mind. So
Wait, I thought that was clapping.
Oh, maybe that is clap. I thought that was raising your hand, but thank you for clapping too.
Okay.
Everyone should be well and have a, oh wait, now I do see someone actually did raise their hand. Hold on now.
We can go over it for a minute. Do you have, can we go over? Yeah.
Julia?
Yeah.
Did you raise your hand?
I just wanted to tell you that I found where the raised hand was. And
Just
it's
in
under
time.
participants.
Thank you. It's under participants.
Okay.
Yes, so if you click on the participants, a list comes up and it says lower, raise hand, and you
Thank
can
you.
click, yeah,
Raise hand.
yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Or mute me.
Well,
Okay.
that's how I do that.
We've
Well,
learned
thank you very
something.
much.
See, we've learned
Keep,
some progress.
keep an eye out for other programs, whether with the two of us or from our different shuls or your shul. There's so much going on in the community, and especially, Rabbi Lopatin.
Yeah, Havdalah this Saturday night. You can find it on all our synagogues' websites or wherever you go. Havdalah, 8:45 p.m., just like 7 minutes after Shabbos is over. 8:45, we'll have chazanim, we'll have singing. We're going to sing that beautiful song, Sanctuary. I think that'll be the last song. So it's going to be great, and it's going to be all over Detroit. And really, I hope one other idea that might be interesting is if you're using Zoom at the Seder, at the second Seder, like maybe 9 o'clock, to have a Detroit moment where everyone zooms into one central place and everyone comes together. So we'll see. We'll talk about that. We'll see what the Committee on Law and Standards rules, and we'll see what happens. But that might be a nice idea for all of Detroit to come together.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks. Good night. Thank you.
Night.
Oh, new messages.